I need to talk with you afterwards. Yep, it is. We'll call this regular city council meeting to order on June 17th, 2024 at 6:02 PM. Roll call, please.
Mr. Eimer. Present. Mr. Bateman.
Present.
Mr. Sanders.
Present.
Mrs. McClellan.
Present.
Mr. Parrott.
Present.
Mr. Downs.
Present.
Mrs. Ross.
Present.
Mrs. O'Donoghue.
Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, is there anybody like to speak under public participation? Okay, for the record, there is no public participation this evening. We'll start with the consent agenda, which consists of 5A, payment of bills, 5B, approval of minutes, April 23rd, 2024, Committee of the Whole meeting, May 6th, 2024, regular city council meeting, 5C, approval of request from AFSCME Local 2073 to permit the closing of Broadway Street from Kickapoo Street to Ottawa Street on Thursday, June 13th, 2023, and I think that should read 24, from 4:30 PM until 5 PM for a walk to Lincoln Junior High School. And 5D, approval of request from the Hunt For Foundation to close various city streets on Wednesday, June 19th, 2024, from 11 a.m. until 8 p.m. for the 5th year Juneteenth celebration.
Second.
Alderwoman O'Donoghue made the motion. Alderman Sanders, second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Sanders.
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan.
Yes.
Mr. Parrott.
Yes.
Mr. Downs.
Yes.
Mrs. Ross.
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donoghue.
Yes.
Mrs. Eimer. Mr. Eimer.
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Okay, next item up is 8A, City Treasurer's Report for May 2024. Treasurer Conzo.
Thank you, Mayor. You've all received copies of this, either in paper or electronically. And you'll see there, if you look at the general fund balance, it's just about $10,000 more than it was a year ago. And it's up, as I told you when I gave you the report, for the month of April, which is the end of the fiscal year, that the fund balance would be diminished as a result of a lot of the bills that we pay at the end of the year. And it's starting to come back up, and you'll see there the tax receipts and tables attached to those, which I'll get into in a minute. But you'll see there we're just about where we were a year ago with regard to the general fund. Unfortunately, I think that is not as good as we should be, and we should strive to achieve a greater fund balance, certainly in the general fund, and in some of the others as well. If you look at the attachments by source of income or revenue streams that we receive through the state of Illinois, you see the municipal sales tax and the use tax. And if you recall, in December, the receipts were a little light, and I told you that was probably a matter of them getting caught up on the processing, and in fact, it has been. So you see there where we did a little bit better this month, the February receipts, which we received in April, and then the month before that for January. So we're ahead a little bit there by about $43,000 from where we were last year at this point in time, based on the calendar year. Similar things with the non-home rule sales tax. There were about $13,000 ahead of where we were, which you would expect that to track. And then the state income tax receipts there were up by about $77,000. Keep in mind with that, though, a lot of that's affected by when people file, and so it'll take several months to see where that ends up. Also, keep in mind, as I've told you numerous times before, this is driven based on the population of the city, proportionate to the state population. Since our population is down as of the 2020 census, this will result in us receiving less as a percentage of statewide population. On the other hand, wages are up somewhat. They're not up nearly as much as prices, but because of that, you see some increase there as well. Replacement tax, this one concerns me a little more. Now, I told you that this was going to level out from what it had been. It had been extremely high. and it's down, and we projected it would be down, but we need to keep an eye on this one too, because this could have we'll see how it goes through the rest of the year, but this could have a negative impact on our budget. We'll want to address that in appropriations if that is the case. Motor fuel tax, we're just about where we were a year ago. Again, this is distributed based on population of the state population of the city relative to the population of the state. People aren't driving more this year, obviously, because the gas prices are higher, and as a result of that, there are fewer gallons of gasoline being sold. And finally, the video gaming tax, you see there, we're just about where we were a year ago, 167,000 at this point in time. We were down a little bit in April. Still one of our better months, as you'll see kind of across the board, but we're down about 2,000, or a little over 2,000 from where we were. But that, again, has a tendency to level out, so I would expect we will see that happen. Are there any questions on that report?
Next up is 8B, the annual city treasurer's report for the Lincoln Fireman's Pension Fund for fiscal year 2023-2024. Treasurer Conzo.
Thank you, Mayor. There seems to be some confusion that few of you have on what this report is and how we've done it in the past. So if there's, to remove all concern about that, this is a report I've done every year. If you want to see it, I'll be happy to show it to you. This is not the same report as the annual treasurer's report for the city, which generally is done is always done after we have the audit. And it is not the same as the monthly report, which I just presented to you. Some of the most notable differences are this shows the balance at the end of the fiscal year compared to the last several years. It goes back to 2015-16. So it's 9 years, the current year and the previous 8 years. And you'll see that doesn't appear in any other report. The annual city treasurer's report does not include the investments here. It does include the sources of revenue that you see there. They're lumped together by source and not by fund in that report. This one breaks it down by police pension fund, fire pension fund, and same thing with the expenses. They're broken down on the second page or the expenditures broken down by what they were used for. And the other information, the number of retirees, annuitants and survivors, et cetera, does not appear in any of those other reports. So just to clarify that for those of you who seem to have some difficulty with this. In any case, you see there where we are. We're a little bit ahead of where we were on the investments. Revenue for the year, a little up a little bit, and you can see it's broken down there. I won't read it line by line. The pension payments that were up considerably. More people retire, and then there's a cost of living increase as well during the course of the year. So that was up by about $100,000. Then a little over that, and then you see the difference there: revenues over expenditures. That does not include the investments. So that does not include the growth where there was growth in investments. That is simply the money in the checking account, as it were, money transferred to the checking account, and that was money that was received, as noted on the previous page, from various taxes and from interest. And then the difference there is what you see there, $313,000. I think the number of annuitants or retirees, number of survivors speaks for itself. As I said, we've had a couple more people retire, and you see the percentage of actuarial valuation. And I would be happy to explain this in further detail if anyone wants to hear about it.
Ms. McClellan.
When you were talking about the replacement tax, do you foresee that maybe affecting what we can put into where we're at now? It's down a little bit. Do you think that it's going to be an effect on that, or?
Yeah, it could. Now, keep in mind, most of the replacement tax goes into the general fund, and then at the end of the year, we take about 11%, I think it is 11-point-something%. It goes into the fire pension fund, and then a similar amount into the police pension fund. Also, throughout the year on that, this was all enacted into law. You and I had this conversation about how this came about, and I know the others have heard this. This was following the Constitution of 1970, when the state of Illinois eliminated the personal property tax. That opened the way for the legislature to implement a replacement tax, or PPRT, personal property replacement tax. But that was stipulated in the law that it had to be distributed based on the way it was in 1976 at the time that was passed. Well, what that means is that that's the percentage that goes into the pensions. Also, because at that time the library, I believe, was still part of city government, so a small part of that too, and it's very small, but it's similar to that. It goes in it's distributed to the library. So, I guess in a roundabout way of answering your question, I think that the impact on that replacement tax, if it does stay down as the year has indicated it might, it would have a greater effect on the general fund than it would on the pension funds. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions regarding the Fireman's Pension Fund report? Okay, next up is 8C, the annual city treasurer's report for the Lincoln Police Pension Fund for fiscal year 2023-2024. Mr. Gonzo.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, report's in the same format as the one that I just presented for the Fireman's Pension Fund. You see the previous 8 years. There you see we had a little bit better results there overall. The investments are up a couple $100,000 there, but that isn't great, but it's better than it going the other way. You see that also the sources of revenue there, which are virtually the same as they are with the Fireman's Pension Fund. You may recall that with the utility tax, we have, since it was implemented, 70% of that goes into the general fund, 30% of that goes into the pension funds. It's divided 55% to fire, 45% to police, and the reason for that is that the Fireman's Pension Fund is underfunded more so than the police pension fund, but both of them are in fact underfunded. And you see there we had similar to last year on the second page. You see what we had with the revenues, or with the expenditures rather. It was pretty close to what it had been, and then you'll see there the difference between revenues and expenditures, again, not including the investments, but with the money that was taken into the checking account, what was paid out. So where we get that difference, and this applies to both of these, is that's money that we have to take out of the investments, which is why the investments don't grow more than they should, and that's the key to the whole thing. And again, you see there the number of annuitants and disability and other things as well. So that kind of summarizes that, but I guess I would, in talking about both of these funds, I would emphasize the fact that these are underfunded, and rather than wait until you have a calamity of some sort where you don't have the money to pay pensions, it would be appropriate for the council to act to increase the funding for our police officers and our firefighters who are affected, and their survivors. And there are many survivors, and I can go into detail on why there are so many with that as opposed to regular pension funds like the IMRF and others. But I'll just leave it to say there are a lot of survivors dependent upon that pension, or on that death benefit or survivor's benefit, and they do not receive a cost of living increase. The annuitants do. Retirees and annuitants receive a COLA every year. The survivors do not, and so that's another important thing to keep in mind.
Mr. Eimer.
Didn't you say we got about, 14 or 15 years to get these pensions in order?
Yeah, based on the
What do you
legislation.
recommend each year that we do as a council to?
Well, I think what you're going to have, we have done something to increase as it indicated on this report, to indicate the transfers from the general fund to the pension funds. And that's probably the only thing you can do. The other thing, when we have a tax levy over the last several years that it's been flat or virtually flat. And I'm not suggesting we put through huge tax increases on anybody, but I think a marginal one appropriate for the rate of inflation, or even less than the rate of inflation, would help us to fund that more. And we have not done that for several years.
Is there a dollar amount a year that we need to?
Over and above what we're doing?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question, Alderman Eimer, and I think if you look at the over and under revenues, over and under expenditures, you see there with Fireman's Pension Fund, it's generally right around the 300,000. We had one few years there where it was below that, and you see with police lately it's been trending upward, and that has about 600,000. So I think if find a way to do it, if we could fund these two pension funds by about those amounts, in other words, about $1 million combined, I think that would certainly help to alleviate a lot of this, because you wouldn't be pulling the money out of the investments and assuming there isn't a complete economic disaster, which could happen. Those investments would grow over a period of time, where they grow a little bit now, but they don't grow like they should because we keep taking money out to fund.
In your opinion, do you think we could do that? Or,
I think you could do it, yeah. I mean, it's gonna be a matter of setting.
Guys to that
right.
direction,
Well,
or-
yeah, that's all I can do.
Yeah, I know. But
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's gonna mean prioritizing some things too. And, maybe not buying some things that are bright and shiny over here that you want to, vacuum up something, or, things of that sort.
Mr. Conzo, do you want to, since we're talking about pensions, mention what you and I have been working on?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. The mayor has recommended we take an actuarial study to determine what we would need to do on an annual basis. And what they do is they project they take the age of the current active members of each fund. In other words, the current police force, the fire department, and the ages of the retirees and anticipated retirements. And it's complicated. It's not something we can do here on a local level and project what we would need to do to be at 90% funded or 100% funded over the next 15 years, or up until 2040. So what I've done is I've contacted two firms, with separate one for each of these, because they've done other things with these pension funds, and they're going to do that. By the time we got around to doing this, the year was over, so what they would have to work with now would be these GASB reports that are from the previous year. So after talking with the mayor, what we agreed to do was to use the GASB reports for the year that just ended, and those will come out. Those will be done by the firms that work with our auditors. They will have those done for them in the early fall. So after that, they should be able to provide those reports. In any case, it should be done well in advance of the time for the tax levy.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Conzo? Okay, thank you, Mr. Conzo.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is 8D, City Clerk's Report for May 2024. Ms. Bateman?
In the month of May, we received $375,265.17 in sewer receipts, which $33,206.84 were from both prisons.
Any questions for Ms. Bateman? Okay, thanks, Ms. Bateman. Okay, and then last up is 8E. This is the department head reports for May 2024. Those are either already on the city website or will be shortly. Okay, next item is 9A, approval of purchase of one new Caterpillar Model D450 GC diesel engine generator in an amount not to exceed $109,640, and this was tabled on May 20th, 2024. Mr. Bounds.
So, City Attorney Hoblet, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're looking for a motion to remove this, or remove it from the table, and then a motion to amend it is what we're looking for.
In accordance with Robert's Rules of Procedure, yeah, you would have to take it off the table, and then if there's a monetary amount that you're looking to have amended, or exactly the model number, then yes, that would need to be moved to be amended.
And you are ready to proceed with,
Yes. Yes, we are ready to proceed. I've got new numbers for you, and we can give that breakdown if,
okay, is there a motion to remove this item from the table?
Motion to remove this item from the table.
Alderman Downs made the motion to remove it from the table. Alderman Eimer, second. Ms. Rolfs?
I was gonna make the motion.
Oh, okay. I thought you had something to say. I want to
No.
make sure we got the motion.
Well, I did.
Okay. And the amendment that you were asking the council to make, Mr. Bounds, is what?
so the amendment we need to make is from the 109,640. That was the price before the Sourcewell discount and before the installation costs. So the cost that we need amended to is $142,359. That includes both the purchase and installation, as well as the Sourcewell discount of 31%.
Okay.
And once again, this won't be purchased until next budget year when we can budget for this, and both of these numbers will be held until then.
Okay, is there an amended motion? Mr. Eimer, yes.
Andrew, why did that go up so much more?
So we actually went down in purchase price on the generator. The purchase price of the generator is $90,681.00. That is a 31% discount from Sourcewell. The install price is $51,588. So the big difference here is the install is included in this price now, as opposed to just having a generator delivered that we can't use.
Mr. Bateman?
I'll make a motion to approve the amount Andrew just said.
Second.
Okay, so for the record, Mr. Bateman made a motion to amend the line item to reflect a purchase amount of $142,359.00. And who seconded it? Ms. O'Donohue? Okay, Ms. O'Donohue second the motion. Mr. Parrott?
Just a couple quick questions. One, do we have to vote on tabling it or taking it off the table? We had a first and a second. Did we have to go around?
We didn't, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Parrott.
And
So,
then
go ahead.
51,000. Is that pretty normal?
Considering the wire that they're going to be using for this is close to $100 a foot, yes, this is an appropriate cost.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so before we proceed, roll call on removing this item from the table.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullen?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donohue?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Conzo, did you have something?
I was going to say, if you're going to consider that amendment to the motion, you may want to add the word "and installation," because the item as it reads now says purchase of, but it doesn't say installation, and you're going to
Okay.
be
That's right.
I missed changing that one. It is changed on two of the other lines as well as the title, but Treasurer Conzo is correct in that.
Okay, so I think the best approach, Ms. O'Donohue, if you'd retract your second, and then if Mr. Bateman would restate the amended motion for the record.
Retract my second.
Will you retract your motion?
Correct
and
my motion. Make a motion. I can't remember the dollar amount. For the purchase and installation of a generator.
not to exceed $142,359.
Second it again.
Mr. Bateman made the amended motion and Ms. O'Donohue second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. O'Donohue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Okay, and then the last roll call on item 9A as amended by the previous motion. Roll call, please.
I guess the same as the.
So
Do we have to make another motion for that?
if you guys want to be technical
This
about
is
it, you
coming.
had one vote. You had one vote to take it off the table.
Yes,
Then you did a second vote to amend the agenda item.
correct.
And now you would have a third vote to approve the item as amended.
I make a motion to approve it as amended.
Second.
Second.
Alderman Bateman made the motion to approve as amended. Alderwoman Ross, second. We good now? Okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Oh, and Mrs.
Okay, good? Yeah. Okay, next up is 9B, approval of request from Up in Smoke to permit the closing of various city streets on Friday, August 23rd, 2024 at 12 p.m. or 5 p.m. as needed until 1 p.m. on Sunday, August 25th, 2024 for the Up in Smoke and Balloons Over 66 event and Dock Dogs.
So moved.
Second.
Alderman Downs made the motion. Alderman Parrott made the motion, and Alderman Downs second. I think you guys were a tie, right? Okay, you went,
Second.
Alderman Downs. Okay, discussion? Mr. Bateman and then Ms. McClellan.
I was
As
just,
stated earlier, I'll be abstaining. I'm just going to go into some clarification because my street closure request is always a little convoluted because I try to work with his businesses downtown. So the Kickapoo Street at the courthouse side and Pulaski Street from Alibi to the crosswalk, that is what will close at 5 a.m. on Friday to allow us to start setting up some of the bigger portions of this event. And then the rest of the area would close around noon on Friday to actually start setting up for the rest of the event, and the fact that Dock Dogs starts performing at noon on Friday. Unfortunately, I still don't have clarification from the people involved, but Pekin Street would be closed between McLean and Kickapoo, starting at 4 p.m. on Friday till 8 p.m. And Saturday, I'm going to say 8 a.m., unless the council would like us to just keep it closed for that section till probably 2 or 3 on Saturday, because I don't have confirmation on when the kids' portion will come to an end in Latham Park. It is a request just to close that street for foot traffic for the younger individuals.
Ms. McClellan. Is there Alderman Parrott and then Alderwoman Ross?
So on Friday, what time are they closing?
From 4 p.m. to approximately 8 p.m.
And then we would open it back up and then close it back the next morning?
Yes, unless the council would like for us to last year, I believe we just kept it closed. So people didn't park in there, and then we had to try to move cars again
Yeah,
Saturday morning.
I just think keep it closed.
Ms. Ross?
My question was, Kevin, since we've got about, 2 months before the event, you'll have all that information in place way before then, and we can put something in our mailboxes so that we know what the closures will be for sure, as I'm sure the police chief and them will have that information, right?
Correct. Right now, Pekin Street is the only variable here because we haven't got it finalized of what is going into Latham Park and how long they will have it going. Last year we had some basketball hoops set up and it went a little longer, so we're trying to get that finalized. That is the kids' portion of this event. The rest of it is pretty much set in stone. Again, we try to work with some of the businesses like Mama's Arcade. We try to keep that section of Pulaski open Friday morning for their breakfast and stuff. But we try to work with everybody as much as we can to keep it open until the event is fully up and running Friday afternoon.
So we have time to make sure that we know it, and it's definitive, and we have it on paper
Yes,
sometime,
yes.
let's say in August.
Ms. McClellan?
so Kickapoo and Pulaski, you said will close at 5 a.m. on Friday, correct?
Portions of Pulaski, all of Kickapoo on the courthouse side. But we do, now that you're a business owner on that street, we will work with people as best we can to try to get the early morning shoppers in there. But if you can post something in your business, we would appreciate it, because starting early Friday morning, we will be bringing in a stage, a tent, and all the food trucks and generators and stuff will start showing up early Friday morning to run cables. We have worked with Ethan quite successfully in the past to try to get them early morning people in and out as best we can. What we're trying to prevent is just long-term someone coming in and parking and they're sitting there for 2 or 3 hours. If you're just getting a quick drink or something easily accessible at your businesses and others down that street, we will try to work as best we can. Just trying to keep everybody safe, because it is big equipment with the stage and food trucks and generators and cables. Again, those of you that haven't been around, we run a lot of electricity that weekend.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay. Roll call on item 9B, please.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Abstain.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Next up is 9C, approval of contract between Lincoln Community High School and the City of Lincoln Police Department for a school resource officer from August 1st, 2024 until July 31st, 2025.
Move to approve.
Second.
Alderwoman O'Donahue made the motion, Alderman Parrott second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Next up is 9D, approval of the arc flash study for the sewer treatment plant in an amount not to exceed $37,812.50.
So
Move
moved.
to approve.
Alderman Bateman made the motion, Alderwoman McClellan second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Next up is 9E, approval of the purchase of a new Hustler 943050-60-inch mower in an amount not to exceed $15,832.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Alderman Downs made the motion, Alderwoman Ross second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Okay, next up is 9F, approval of the purchase of body cameras and tracking devices for the Lincoln Fire Department in an amount not to exceed $10,000.
Move to approve.
Second.
Alderman Sanders made the motion, Alderwoman O'Donahue second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. O'Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Okay, this brings us down to announcements. The only announcement that I have is, well, I got two. First, thank you for Mr. Bateman for filling in for me last week. And a couple days when I got back, I've been under the weather a little bit. And then the next is, don't forget that Third Fridays is this week, and it is Nashville Nights. It's typically one of the largest events that we have for Third Fridays for the year. So if you'd like to come out, please do. If you have time to volunteer or help, we would gladly take the help. The committee would. But come out and have a good time. Is that on our Facebook? Okay, so there's a sign up for the bounce houses. So that's typically during the event where we have to have the most help, is manning the bounce houses for safety purposes. There's a sign up form on the Facebook page or on the Third Fridays page. And you get to, you're talking about the city website, right?
No, it's the third. Friday Facebook.
Oh, I forgot. They have a specific page for Third Fridays. Yeah. So go there. We'll repost it to the city Facebook page to make it easy to find for everybody. But if you can help, please do.
Yes, we would gladly accept your help, but we kind of desperately need the help.
Yeah.
Nashville Nights is extremely busy. If you can give us 30 minutes to an hour of your time, we would greatly appreciate it.
What are those times, Peggy?
The bounce houses go from 5:30 to 8:30, so the sign up is for an hour at a time. But if you want somebody to split a shift with you, just sign your name on there and just have that other person split it with you if it's easier. It's going to be very hot. I can feel me melting now.
Yep. But the times are pretty strict, like at 8:30.
Yeah. At 8:30
And
he
shut
puts
off.
it down. There's no questions. It's down.
Yep.
If you can give us 30 minutes, it would be greatly appreciated.
What if we
And-
give you 45? Would that help?
Even bigger greatly.
Anytime. And we still have some T-shirts available, right?
Well, everybody's got one here.
Yep. If you don't have one, get with Peggy. We'll figure it out. Okay. That's the only announcements that I had. Anybody else have announcements? Okay. Alderman Eimer, Alderman Downs, and then Alderman Sanders.
Last week, one of the Lincoln Street Department retirees had passed away, Gene Warnisher. Some of you probably do know him or whatever. Just wanted to give a shout out, condolences to his family, his wife Linda, and the 3 boys. One of the boys was a city fireman here. He works down in Springfield now. So they will be burying him this Saturday here in Lincoln. He moved to Texas, and he's now been brought back home, and will be coming back home tomorrow. So just want to condolences to the family.
Yeah, we were pulling some information on him. Those of us that weren't familiar with him, we'll do a moment of silence for him next week. Oh, there you go. So you got the details. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Eimer? You good? Okay. Mr. Downs?
I just wanted to remind everyone they're all welcome to attend the Juneteenth Festival this Wednesday, 4 to 8 p.m. at Latham Park. There'll be bouncy houses, food trucks, live music, and a good time.
Okay. Mr. Sanders?
Gonna say, if you guys haven't driven out, check out the new mural that was done by Stella's Fine Arts, and they're from New York. They drove all the way down here to do this for us. It looks amazing.
Have they already left town?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, it does. It looks great. We drove by and took a look last night.
You have to look at the detail, because when Alderman Sanders, myself, and Mrs. Bateman was out there, they hadn't started on it yet, but they literally have in the bottom, you can tell, you got to get kind of closer to see, they have a log cabin that they were finishing, and they actually further up painted Abraham Lincoln riding away from the cabin on his horse, like he was going to work or whatever. It's pretty. The detail of the stars and the flag is just what's amazing to me. But it's pretty cool. Nobody knew it was coming till it started, and it is. I hope we can do more stuff like that in this town, because it is amazing.
The gentleman said, if you need anything else painted in town, just let me know. So
It is
I got his
beautiful.
card.
Details
Who did
are
that?
amazing.
Dave, who did that?
Stiletto Fine Arts. They're from New York.
From New
No,
York.
but the people that own the building commissioned that? That's what I
Yes.
was wondering. It wasn't something,
They were contracted by the owners,
Yeah, they were contracted by the owners. It was
Beverage Genie.
a complete fluke that they ran into the guy. They were painting a
Beautiful.
mural in
Beautiful.
Indiana, and the guy saw their mural in Indiana and came to them and said, "Can you paint Abraham Lincoln?" That guy was the guy that owned the building.
did we write him a thank you note?
Yeah, they actually just wrapped up everything yesterday.
They gave Mrs. Bateman a little card she's going to have framed. They were handing out cards that had their information and stuff on it, and they don't specialize in portraits. The guy did a lot of research on Abraham Lincoln, and they are more than excited to continue that kind of work, especially if the city comes up with other walls to do. But it was it was a traffic stopper, and it's amazing looking.
Do you know?
I mean, it's big.
Do you know if that's something we can get approved for a print of from Stilettos? I think it'd be nice to have in City Hall somewhere.
They were pretty gracious. I don't
I mean, she went inside and got them, so I don't know if they have them inside there at the,
have more of them or whatever, but
Colin.
it was,
I can go out there and find out.
Yeah, would you?
and they hired somebody else to help them because it was so big.
Yeah, they hired a guy named Bruce, and he works with.
He works with the gentleman that is painting our mural.
Scotland.
Scott?
Yeah, so, yes, it's, boy, if we got walls that big, it looks good.
Steve?
Yeah, I think it's probably a pretty tight, knit group of artists because, Scott has mentioned he has a group of friends that helps him as well, and he helps them too in some projects. And while we're speaking of murals, I think ours is finished. We're just working on getting everything prepped on the building so that the mural can actually go up. And so don't know of a time yet. Wes, have you got any information? Okay, so look for another mural coming up in the coming weeks.
Okay, perfect.
We will have a ribbon cut, though, won't we?
Yes.
We'll have a ribbon cut.
Yes, we'll have a ribbon cut.
Yep. Mr. Bateman?
I just want to touch on, I know a lot of people travel, but the Batemans are blessed with having a family that lives in Heron, Illinois. And when you drive through that town, those are the things, there's murals on the sides of all kinds of buildings down there, all different genres, all different times of the year, all different dates during the city. Mr. Sanders and I spoke again. We would love to get a Al Capone themed mural going in this town. For those that don't know, that he spent a lot of time in this town, but I would love to, for an organization to start working closely with other businesses and stuff and see if we can get more of these things going, because they are traffic stoppers, and there is a group of people that travel to look at these things.
I know Mr. Downs would like to see Langston Hughes in a mural as well. And Historic Preservation did an inventory of the murals that are currently in town and the cost to rehab them and things of that nature. So they did a lot of that prep work, but that doesn't stop us from doing new murals as well. And I think it was a great initiative on the part of that business owner. It will catch the attention of everybody coming in on that corridor. It is a beautiful piece of art. So, okay, Mr. Landers.
Yes, even though the city will be closed on Wednesday due to the Juneteenth holiday, the landscape waste facility will still be open, so it will be open Wednesday. I would like to thank Bill and Kathy Vineyard. Once again, they're planning. I think they're finishing up right now, planting the plants in the big pots over on Pulaski Street. So that should be all finished up for this weekend or for Friday. So they're finishing up on that project. And then I want to make everybody aware that Union Street will be closed south of Woodlawn Road. So you will not be able to turn south on Union Street off of Woodlawn starting tomorrow. The contractor for Illinois American Water is doing some utility cut repairs there. There's 2 of them. That's pretty much going to take up the whole southbound lane. The last I knew, Friday, that work was scheduled for tomorrow, so I would assume that street will be closed there tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Any other announcements? Last thing that come to mind, the COGFA hearing that took place on Thursday. Unfortunately, I got back from vacation. I was sick. I could not be around other people, but Ms. Rolfs, you were there, correct?
Yes, I was.
You want to speak about how that went? I watched the video. I thought it went rather well, but did you want to speak about it?
I thought that it was very well attended, needless to say. There were a lot of people there. I was impressed with the 3 panelists. There was 2 senators and 1 representative from, one was from up in the Elgin area, one was from in the kind of Peoria area, and then the gentleman from the Jacksonville area. And of course, he was very good because he lives in a town where a prison was closed and was able to relate a lot of what has happened within their community. The panels were all quite interesting, and I thought everybody did a very good job based on where their perspective was. And of course, there was different perspectives. Having been a negotiator in a 29-day strike at Lincoln High School years ago, you learn that there's a lot of rhetoric that happens within that. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that everybody could understand, excuse me, some of that rhetoric, which, again, involves a perspective. But I think that the overall attendance, the comments that were made, that if anybody did not get the feeling that Lincoln, Logan County should be the place where this prison is, when you stop and think about 40% of the people, the inmates, are from the Chicago area, the other 60% are from below that. And if you move it up there, you're asking parents, children, whomever, to drive all the way from southern Illinois to the Chicago area, and we know what that distance is. So how many of those people would be deprived of seeing their relatives on a more regular basis because they would have to travel that distance? I thought the gentleman from Decatur who works there, relating the information as to the qualifications that a person must have to work with the prisoners here in Lincoln, which are at the highest risk, compared to what it is in Decatur, which is the very minimum. So moving some of our inmates to Decatur won't even be a possibility because they wouldn't qualify for that facility. So you could tell there is an awful lot that goes into, and I felt that the panel from the state did an excellent job. Whether or not that panel has the greatest influence over the administrative area is another question.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part about that was, and I don't know if you knew about this or others, but the following day, the COGFA panel was supposed to take a vote, and unfortunately, out of the 12-member panel, only 3 members were present. So COGFA they were not legally able to take a vote on the closure of either facility. By statute, that closed the 50-day window that they have to operate in. So as I was explaining to Mr. Parrott on the way in this evening, we're trying to figure out what that actually means. Can the administration move forward without the recommendation from COGFA, or do they have to go through that process again? We're not sure what this means. But until we find that out, myself and I know all of us here will continue to fight to keep that facility here in Logan County. It just makes sense. Based on all the information, it doesn't make sense to move that one up north. I think everybody agrees that those facilities need to be rebuilt, but it certainly makes sense to keep that one here. I mean, the cost perspective they talked about alone was extremely important. So,
But you're seeing all the little kids that were there. It makes it very, very personal to know that these people have their families here, and I'm talking more like the employees.
Yep.
And what the impact it's going to have on them in the long run if they have to make a decision to move or not to move and try to find a job elsewhere.
And there was a couple things. There's an audio recording of the COGFA hearing or the meeting from yesterday. So if you go out to the COGFA page, I'll put a link out there on Facebook on the city's page. And so people can easily find it. It's about 28 minutes long. It's just an audio, but I think it's interesting to hear of the 3 panel members that were there, what their perspective was on it. What I heard a lot was they were supposed to be voting on a plan, but we don't feel they've even presented a plan. There's a lot of other things that went in there. I think the panel did a wonderful job. So I'll put that one out there. And then, I think there was something else I was gonna say, but it slipped my mind. So, Mr. Bateman.
There's a very good in-depth article on the front page of the SJR this morning, covering it. I got there late. I was one of the quite a few people standing out in the hallway because it was full, even the floor. The junior high, Mrs. Bateman was sitting up top row. So if you go to the SJR, if you don't receive the paper or go online, it's a very good article. And those three panelists give their honest opinion, not only of what they think, but let's just say that one of them gave their opinion of the people who didn't bother to show up for the hearing.
They're disappointed in the lack of participation from the governor's office. Putting it bluntly, that's what they've stated. There was also
Disappointed but expected?
That's why when myself, Senator Turner, Rep. Howder, Ms. Davenport, and Ms. Runge went to Springfield several weeks ago, I specifically told them when I got a chance to speak, this may be the only time we get to speak with you, so I'm going to be blunt with you. And I brought up a lot of the things that have been discussed, but I also reminded them, they've got LDC sitting out here on the edge of our community as a reminder of how they haven't followed through on their commitment to our community in the past. Please don't do it again. We were polite in that setting, but I did say, and I explained the feelings I had driving out of our community and the condition and what that looked like. And I said, that's what people see when they come into our community from that corridor. If you haven't come through our community, please do. So hopefully they'll listen. But we'll see. I know what I wanted to say. There was I believe it was Lincoln Daily News, had an article that was published about comments from somebody that is housed at Logan. And she provided some conflicting statements that were shared at the COGFA hearing about how the conditions aren't that bad. So that's worth a read too. Not to promote any news media outlet over the other, but that article is out there.
It was a letter to the editor maybe Tuesday of last week, Monday or Tuesday of last week. She's been there 35 years, and she is one that said she must be a resident of Southern Illinois, and she would be very impacted if her family had to travel a total of over 7 hours to come visit her. She did make a very good point, as well as Mrs. Rolfs, that this is a max prison. They're trying to rehabilitate these women, and being centrally located is fair to everybody, especially less than, I think it's, the actual number's like 37% is from the Cook County area. The rest is from Southern Illinois.
Yep.
So there's a lot of good articles out there, but you know, it is very important to us to keep it here.
Yep.
Well, the rest of them are from basically south of Chicago, but not all from Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
Some of them are right in the center too.
Mr. Parrott?
Yeah, so my wife and I, we are able to volunteer out at the prison in the ministry, and been in a few of the different buildings out there. And there are some that, you know, the gymnasium had to been closed down for like mold issues. But other than that, you know, the buildings are, you know, in decent, you know, in pretty decent shape, other than, you know, trying to need some upgrades and those types of things, at least in the buildings that I've been in. But I don't think they all have air conditioning, you know, and stuff, but that's just across the state as well. And in some of these different prisons. And, you know, I think it was like going to be like $100 million difference. I was there for most of it, in building a new one, and then just in repairing and updating the one here in Lincoln. So that's a big difference in money.
But the thing is our community of people have worked there in these conditions. And the state of Illinois has known what those conditions are all along, especially if they've done their due diligence in keeping in touch with what the prison is like. But our people have had to work there. And so I understand the prisoners' complaints. But I feel that our people have done a great job in staying there, working, and doing the best that they could too. And I can speak from, of course, my daughter works at the prison, so.
It's a
um,
multifaceted issue,
yeah,
that's
it
for
is.
sure. So, okay, so I just want to bring up the COG for hearing, and I'll put those links out there so everybody can see them or listen to the audio if you haven't already. Okay, if there's no other announcements, I'd like to ask a council member to make a motion to go into executive session under 2C11 litigation.
Move to go under litigation underneath 2C11.
Second.
Alderman Parrott made the motion, Alderman Downs second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Okay, we're going into executive session at 6:57 PM. There will be no city business to follow.